Alright, being 6:02, I'll declare the January Ordinary Council meeting of the Shire of Capel open. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Wadandi people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their culture, and to elders past and present, their descendants who are with us today and those who will follow in their footsteps. Record of attendance, we have 7 councillors in attendance tonight. We have apologies from Councillor Clues and Councillor Dillon. There is no response to previous public questions taken on notice, so we move to public question time. Received a couple on notice. The first was from Pat Scallon. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us this evening due to volunteering commitments, but has asked that we read his question out on his behalf. So his first question relates to the Stratham beachfront. A community workshop was held in 2016 where local issues were raised about the ability to safely enjoy the beachfront. The Stratham Progress Association raised similar concerns in 2017. A few of us did a presentation to some councillors in 2021 on the proposed plan, highlighting a number of aspects that could be done on a progressive basis over time to enhance this area and to make it more appealing and user-friendly, as well as making it safer. Previous infrastructure has either fallen into disrepair or has been taken away. A response was eventually received saying the Shire would have to engage a coastal engineer to survey the site for a feasibility study to be created. As there was no budget for this works, we were told this would be included in the proposed budget for the 2022-23 financial year, and we would be advised of the outcome. However, we were not informed whether or not it was included. Further discussions, I was told that the Shire was considering reviewing all beach accesses, and a report would be done together with a plan to be put to the Council for consideration. Could Council please advise on the status of the proposed plan we submitted, whether monies was included in the budget for doing a survey or a feasibility report, or whether an all of Shire review has been proposed to be conducted on various beach accesses? The response to that question, the report you're referring to was the Shire's Coastal Values Survey, which was completed in late 2022. The survey included responses from nearly 400 residents and visitors and detailed how people used our beaches, what was special about them, and what facilities and infrastructure people would like to see. Information gathered covered beaches from Dalyellup through to Forest Beach, including Stratham. Over time, the Shire will use this information to develop a coastal management plans for each beach in the area, and then include these plans upgrades in any future draft capital works programs. Funds for a feasibility study at Stratham Beach was not included in the adopted 2022-23 annual budget. However, there will be a process in the future to better understand what is needed by the community at each beach and how these proposals will be considered in future budgets. The second question from Mr. Scallon. Further to the beachfront proposal, I made a proposal to consider installing cameras to monitor and consequently better enforce beach access rules to eliminate antisocial behaviour. I regularly inform the Shire of vandalism done to the beachfront, which is normally done after hours and is not deterred by the ranger who occasionally visits during the work hours. As I do attend the Capel playground on a regular basis with my grandchildren, I do notice a number of times that vandalism has occurred in and around the park, which may also be deterred if individuals are identified and taken to task. The cost and quality of cameras is now more affordable, and funding has been available previously through government grant opportunities, and once installed would allow the rangers to attend more important aspects to his or her job. The ranger will then also be able to immediately respond to these behaviours that are highlighted through this monitoring system. Has Council considered installing cameras for addressing these antisocial behaviours that would make our public areas safer? And if not, would Council consider this as a priority during their 2023-24 budget deliberations? The Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Shire President. And we thank Mr. Scallon for the question. Video or CCTV surveillance does have a place in reducing instances of antisocial behaviour and potentially capturing evidence of alleged offences. Permanent surveillance can form part of an overall community safety strategy. Mr Scullin is correct in that the cost of cameras is becoming more affordable and they are more capable than they have been in the past. Surveillance cameras, however, to a certain extent, still rely heavily on the presence of good environmental lighting. Otherwise, the quality of images captured is often poor and not useful either as evidence or as a deterrent. Additional to lighting, the cost of cameras often forms only a small part of the upfront and ongoing costs of permanent surveillance. Other costs and considerations include the storage of captured footage, remote connectivity, staffing resources, and the ongoing maintenance and repairs of equipment by certified technicians. The Shire over time will consider the use and cost of video or CC surveillance as part of an overall community safety strategy, but do not have plans to install this type of equipment in specific locations at this time.
We had one more question on notice from Mr Mike Norton, who's not in attendance tonight, but I'm happy to read out his question. Has the Boyne Up Sale Yards lease agreement been completed? If so, statements were made in December that the Shire of Capel / Livestock Industry Committee would be put in place in the early new year. Is this still on the agenda for the next phase of the relocation of the Boyne Up Sale Yards? That committee would be established to identify a future suitable site, develop a financial model to purchase land, build a sale yard infrastructure, manage the site and entity, identify the ownership model on behalf of the Shire of Capel and the WA livestock producers. Are the above assumptions going too early, going far, or does the Shire of Capel have another agenda? Response to those questions to Mr Norton. The lease for the 10-year agreement is currently over East with the separate parties that make up Walser for signing. The completing of the signing has been delayed due to the absence of authorised representatives over the festive break. Moving on with the forming of a steering committee, the commencing the first stage of an agribusiness precinct study remains high on the Shire's agenda and a higher priority to the extent that it has been included as a KPI for the CEO in 2023. The study's brief is currently being drafted and the expressions of interest for the steering committee representatives will be advertised in late February. The purpose of the first stage of the study will be to understand the future needs of the industry throughout the region, identify potential future sites, complete necessary feasibilities studies, consider ownership and management arrangements, as well as develop a business case / funding model that would eventually see the development of an agribusiness precinct that includes the relocation of the sale yards from the Boyne Up town site. They're all the questions we had on notice. Were there any questions from the floor? Nope. All right. Applications for leave of absence. Just have Councillor McCleary for which month? For March. I have myself for the May meeting. Are there any applications for any further? No. Can I get a mover for those, please? Move Councillor Noonan. A seconder, Councillor Sciano. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Declarations of interest. We just have one this evening from myself on item 15.3, the rates waiver for the Boyne Up Progress Association. It's a proximity interest. There are no notice of items to be discussed behind closed doors. Number to item 8, the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting of the 21st of December 2022. Is there a mover for those minutes? Councillor McCleary. A seconder, Councillor Sciano. Any discussion on those? No. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Announcements by the presiding person without discussion. Just one this evening. Item 14.2, policy review, trading in public places, has been withdrawn from this evening's agenda. Petition, deputations and presentations. We have one this evening from Mr John Saunders on the Fettlers Cottages.
How's that? Is that working okay? Okay, thank you, Mr. President, CEO, councillors and staff, for the opportunity to address you today. As you're aware, we have 3 heritage cottages in Boynup which sit on Fettlers Park, which is on one title, and although the 3 properties look like they're on separate titles, they are just on, defined by the
Oh, sorry, it's more the streaming online.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try that again. So 2 of the cottages, the smaller ones, 77 and 83, are unique in the Capel Shire because they're built from Tasmanian hewn pine and Canadian Oregon, and they were built in 1952. The Station Master's house is an all-jarrah house that was built in Perth in 1960 and then transported down to Boynup and erected again in 1964. Now, the PTA obviously owned the land, and some time ago they were looking to vest the Fettlers Park in the Shire, and at that time the Shire obviously looked at the cottages and decided that they were not able to take them on, and the option was to demolish them. Now, there were 11 of these cottages, but the others have been demolished, so that we've only got 3. Now, obviously, the people in Boynup were very concerned. They didn't want to see the heritage of the town demolished. So the Progress Association approached the Shire to discuss what we could do to save those houses. Unfortunately, the other person that we thought might do it, which is someone else, had passed away a little bit before then, so it came back to us. So we eventually took a lease, not because we want to, but there was no other option if we wanted to save the houses. And look, it has worked very well. So in 2010, the Boynup Town Site Strategy, it shows in there the Shire will establish and promote a tourist and heritage precinct, and it states that the cottages should be used as part of the tourist and heritage precinct. In 2014, the Boynup Heritage and Rail Master Plan states the Shire will refurbish the heritage cottages, use lease for arts, crafts, local produce and cultural purposes. So both plans obligate the Shire to save and use the cottages. So where are we up to with them? So invested so far, and probably not a lot of people realise that before the PTA vested it in the Shire, they spent a little over $100,000 taking out the asbestos out of the homes. The SWDC with Mick Murray put in $10,000, and that was used to re-stump Cottage 83. BPA, from the rents that we've received on the cottages, has spent $90,000. And then we have the BPA volunteer work, donations and in-kind, which I believe would be conservative at $50,000. So the total so far of investment is $250,000, which just shows that heritage is certainly not cheap. And the Shire has foregone $16,500 in rates. However, I would remind the councillors that if the homes had been demolished, there wouldn't be any ability to charge rates. So 3 years ago, I was standing right here talking on exactly the same subject, advising the council that we had a 5-year program to finish major works. And those major works are, at the moment, we've got 2 roofs to replace at about $7,000 each, which let's call it $15,000. And we've got to re-stump the middle house, which is about $15,000. So we've got $30,000 of major works to do. We've got a volunteer team that works on the houses all the time, and every one of those is over 70 years of age. So we would ask that you support this team in their efforts to make sure that these cottages are brought back to what they should be. So we ask the council to reject the recommendation and to continue to support the BPA in renovating and maintaining the cottages, which are Shire assets.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Now move to item 11.1, the Lord Mayor, motions of which notice have been given. I have put forward a motion with the second support of Councillor Sciano for a Lord Mayor's Distress Relief Fund, that the Shire of Capel 1 makes an immediate donation of $1,000 to the Lord Mayor's Distress Relief Fund, Kimberley Flood Appeal, and 2, authorise the funds to be withdrawn from account 0222 donations. It's seconded by Councillor Sciano. Not too much to say, I suppose, on that one. More the Shire of Capel, we do have a history of helping out the wider community around the state in times of natural disaster. Just those 3 previous examples there, those donations to the Wooroloo bushfires and the Woorona and district bushfires. You know, we've certainly helped out our neighbours in the past, and this is also another one of those cases where nature has gone a little bit harder than it usually does in the area. So I think it's just a little bit of money we can do to help those people rebuild their community. So, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, just to add to that, I think we all know just how devastating the situation is in the Kimberley, and you know we have a history of donating to the Lord Mayor's Relief Fund. I think why the Lord Mayor's Relief Fund is so important, and probably one that we single out, is that it is administered by the City of Perth. All the costs of administering the program, the fund, are consumed by the City of Perth. So all the money that is donated by the Shire ends up directly in the pockets of organisations that are up there and helping and assisting people. So it's a very important fund to support. It's pretty normal practice as well for local governments to make donations to the reliefs that are open when they are, for whatever unfortunate circumstance. So very glad that we've been able to meet and consider a donation to assist with the recovery of the floods in the Kimberley.
Are there any speakers for or against the item? Councillor Noonan.
Question, Mr. President, if I could. Has the Shire already made a donation in regard to the floods at this stage?
Not directly to the floods, however the Shire does include a $1,000 allocation to the Lord Mayor's Distress Relief Fund every year. I'm not sure if that money has been distributed yet, but it has, so that's already gone to them, so they've already received $1,000 from us. They would hold that money in trust until the next appeal opened, which would be this one. So they would have already received that $1,000. This is an additional $1,000. So in total, this appeal would receive $2,000 from the Shire of Capel.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any other speakers? No? I don't think I need to close that, so I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. There are no questions of which previous notice has been given, so we move on to item 13, Chief Executive Officer reports. 13.1, the Corporate Business Plan of 2022 to 2026, second quarter reporting from October to December 2022. Is there a mover for that report? Councillor Sciano. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terrantroy. The Deputy President.
I don't necessarily have much to say on this item. It's obviously a report for council to note as a progress update on the CEO's performance in managing the corporate business plan. I think a lot of really the way it's summed up, and I see there's been a change in the way this has been presented to council, and actually seeing the visually the percentage and how we are on track, and there's looking at quarter one over quarter two. I think there obviously has been quite a significant improvement. Well, I think there's been a lot of progress made, basically. I think that's pretty clear on page 16, so I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Terrantroy. Are there any speakers for or against that item? Anything further from the mover? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Item 13.2, Policy Review, Web Streaming of Council Proceedings. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Sciano. Any seconder? Councillor McCleary. The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very simple changes to this policy. It's obviously a regular review. There's literally just a number of updates to terminology, really, in this policy. So I don't think there's much to add on that.
Councillor McCleary. Fine. Are there any speakers for or against? Anything from the mover? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Item 13.3, Policy Review, Complaints Management. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'll move the motion as read. There's very little changes to this policy, so I think it just covers it off, tidies it up a bit.
Councillor Terrantroy. Are there any other speakers for or against? Does the mover wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Oh, sorry. I'll take that vote again. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. All right, the following item was deferred at the 21st of December Ordinary Council meeting. However, no councillors had spoken to the item. Item 13.4, the reviewed communications and social media policy. So the item is already moved and seconded. So I just can open the floor to anyone. Are there any speakers for or against the item? Nope, I'll put that item to the... Councillor Noni wishing to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I think I will speak to this because I moved the initial motion or the procedural motion at the December meeting, November meeting to push this back. And I think just to make the point that we've had this now for at least a couple of months. We've had a workshop on it. We spent time, with the team of people who put it together. A lot of people have done a lot of work. The intention, I think, is clear that this is to provide a guideline to assist councillors, to assist members of the Shire, members of the staff, to give everyone a clear indication of what we would like to see so that we're delivering a consistent message. I'd make the point that if in down the track it turns out that people misinterpret the intention of this motion, that we have the ability to, in fact it will be scheduled for a review, and that things can be changed within it to tighten up if it turns out that it does create any uncertainty for people. But the whole idea, the intention behind it has always been to try and encourage people to encourage the promotion of the Shire, so that we present the Shire in the best possible way that we can. And I think that's a really good thing for us to do. So I will be voting for the policy.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Andrew? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I think Council has shared a similar view on the use of the word consistency in messaging. Amendment was passed in I'm losing a bit of track of which meetings we do it, but Council has unanimously decided to remove the wording to ensure consistency in messaging to the community. And I mean, that was unanimous. I think it has been raised with me by a number of councillors that there was concerns around that wording. And so it has been good to see that go. I mean, the process for this obviously has been long. We've had a few discussions about this. The original policy had some issues around numbering and even formatting issues. It's gone back to committee. We've had a discussion about this as council. We've obviously, the alternative policy has been provided to council and moved as an alternative, as a foreshadowed motion. I think around the comments in regard to personal capacity and commenting on a personal capacity, ultimately that's addressed that is actually addressed in the policy. So now I've lost it because I've gone back up to the Councillor Public Statements. Yeah, Councillor Public Statements and Communications to the Shire. So personal communications. So personal communications and statements made private. No, that's the wrong one as well. I'm trying to find the exact one. 63. So it does actually...
No talking in the chamber.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So councillor may choose to make personal statement or communication publicly on a matter related to the business of the Shire of Capel. They must obviously clearly state that the comment or content is a personal view, because no councillor is allowed to speak on behalf of the Shire, and that is within our standing orders, local law. Take reasonable care and diligence as per Rules of Conduct Reg 3. Be lawful, including avoiding contravention or copyright defamation. I think that's a pretty fair comment. Be factually correct. Avoid damage reputation to local government, which is covered again by Rules of Conduct. Not reflect adversely on the decision of council, which is 7.4 in the standing orders local law. I mean, I think these are pretty fair and reasonable expectations that you can have personal opinions on things, and we're talking about stuff that could be before council, and I think it's addressed that you can, I've definitely felt as a councillor that we've been able to effectively and respectfully have opinions on matters before council, and whatnot. Obviously, as Councillor Andrew has said quite correctly, is that once it becomes a decision of council, we are then in a situation where we have standing orders and an act which doesn't allow us to adversely speak on any decision before council. So I, for one, really glad that this has gone through that process. It's been a process with all of council and what we've got here, and I am happy to support the alternative recommendation that's been moved by council.
Are there any other speakers? No, I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And that's carried 6-1. Item 14, Infrastructure and Development Reports. 14.1, Review of Delegation 116, Town Planning. Is there a mover? Councillor Andrew.
I'll move the alternative motion, please.
Yep. The alternative delegation that's been circulated, yep.
Yes, it has.
Yep. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. So some of this is a combination of reverting back to the original, and some of these are add-ins because they are new add-ins to this policy. So I'll start with the First Amendment, which is on page 2, which is schedule. So it's adding in, is it highlighted, Talia, or do I actually need to point out where it is? Or is it red? It is red. Okay, so the first one is taking that back out and reverting it to the old delegation. The second one is the same. And then the third change on that page is putting use of land not listed in the zoning table back in as well. It's also putting back in the subsection, I've got it as G, but on the thing it's D, about the delegation doesn't apply for applications for change of non-conforming use. And the reason I did that is because when you read the information in the officer's recommendation, it talks about how Scheme 8 has, it's not as general, it's more defined, which to me then means that anything that comes that isn't a use not that is a use not listed means that it's even more outside of the norm. And so why we would delegate our authority as council to put what these really strange oddball applications that may come to us, why we would delegate authority to those to a staff member, I'm not sure. To me, those really outside the box ones, they're the ones that are most important that they come to us. That's part of our role as councillors. All right, we move on to the next page, the heritage. I don't have a problem with them using the delegation, but I think that all the decisions that are made in accordance with the delegation should be noted, and I think that we should be told about them. I've made the same inclusion under significant trees. Again, I think that all decisions made in accordance with the delegations should be noted to councillors. I've completely removed non-conforming uses. I think that all non-conforming uses, as I've spoken to earlier, should come to council. And then under subdivision and amalgamations, again, I've put back in there that all decisions made in accordance with the delegation are to be noted in the information brochure to councillors. So this last one that I've added back in, that was in the old delegation. So what effectively the new policy did was, I feel, in a really patronising way, say, give us this delegation plus more delegations, and these things are just too complicated. They're too big a planning decisions. You won't understand them. So give us the delegation and don't you worry your pretty little heads about it. And we're not even going to tell you.
I'm not going to ask you to withdraw the comment, but I might just ask that you be a bit more gentle in your words and phrasing, please, councillor.
And we're not even going to tell you that we've used the delegation to make these decisions. That just absolutely does not fit comfortably with me at all. Anytime a delegation like this should be used, we should be receiving notice about it. Planning decisions are some of the biggest decisions that we can make that have the most impact on our residents, and that's why I think that they are some of the most important decisions that we can make. So that's my alternative recommendation with the attachment. It's the attachment that we're amending, not the actual motion, and that's the reasoning for them.
Councillor McCleary.
Start with a question first. When we're going through the planning decisions, and especially in the non-conforming uses, there's still the option for people to object neighbouring properties and stuff. Is that right?
Yes. It's not necessarily in the delegation, but it is in the planning framework that objections that are received are to be noted, and those submissions are reviewed by the council. Yes.
Right. Thanks. Look, I agree with the amendments or the changes back. Simply because I think, especially in the trying to think of it. not a normal, non-conforming uses. Removing that, because I think that's the most thing where we need to go back out to the public and get some comments coming back in from them when they something that's not the norm is going to be built near them, and that's kind of like that part of it. And I think bringing things back means we have those discussions when we need to, and in the majority of cases I think planning goes through a conforming process before it gets through there, so it's nice for that to come back to council.
Are there any speakers against the amendment, the alternative? Speakers for? Councillor Terrantor, a question?
Yes, I just wanted a question about the changes under the development applications on page 2. How does taking out relevant applications made under the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme and then the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme below with the authority to exercise the council's powers, how does that actually change it? Does that limit the council in any negative way, our Shire? Because it talks about powers and duties, and it says the processing and advertising and determination of development application. Yeah.
So essentially all that just means there is that if an application comes through that complies with the local scheme 8, and the advertising requirements of uses not listed, then the staff have the authority to do that processing, advertising and determinations under that development application, but not if it sits under the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme.
Right, but don't we sit under the Greater... That was my question. Doesn't our Scheme 8 sit under the Greater Bunbury...
Yes, but not necessarily every application will be captured by its requirements.
Oh, so it's not like going to hog tie take something out that it needs to be in there. Okay, thank you.
Are there any further speakers for or against? Councillor Andrew, do you wish to close?
Thank you. There was just one other thing that I forgot to mention with the non-conforming uses, and the reason that I was really uncomfortable with those being delegated was that those are the ones that are most likely to end up at SAT or JDAP as well, that eventually will be then a decision of council whether or not we defend those and whether or not we put funds towards legal proceedings to defend those decisions. And I just think that if we're going to take that step, then it should be our decision that we're defending, not someone that's made the decision on our behalf, and then we then have to end up trying to defend a decision that may not have actually been our decision, if that makes sense. So that's all I'll say.
All right, I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Those changes to that delegation will be publicised in the minutes for those wishing to view them. 14.2 Policy Review Trading in Public Places has been withdrawn. So we now move to item 15, Community and Corporate Reports. 15.1 Policy Review Investment of Funds. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Sciano, is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. The Deputy President.
Just move this item as read. Don't have any additional comments to make.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers for or against the item?
Other than to say thank you very much to the Director of Finance for her work in preparing this and looking after the funds and where the money's put. I think that the Shire is doing very well, looking at the financial reports, and this just simply, the purpose of this is to continue that process of good financial management.
Are there any further speakers? No. The mover wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Item 15.2, age-friendly community strategy 2023 to 2027. Is there a mover? Councillor Terrantroy. A seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Terrantroy.
Moved as read. I just think it's really important to have a age-friendly community strategy that highlights the barriers that exist to ageing population, and it also makes it inclusive of other people as well, like putting ramps in where ramps would be better for people who can't do 100 stairs. Like not a lot of older people can do that. So I think that, you know, access to transport, it's all really good stuff. Access to healthcare, and also being able to improve its age-friendly status within the Shire. So I think it's a great strategy, and I commend the officers for all their hard work. Thank you.
Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. And look, I concur with all that. One thing I will say, I don't feel like I'm a senior, but according to that, I am. But yeah, I think there's some good things in there. There's a bit of a way working through. I kind of like the thought that they're looking at facilities throughout the Shire that will improve for people as they age through our community. Mind you, I still think seniors is a lot older than what the target is at the moment, and that's my opinion. Thanks.
Are there any speakers against the item? Speakers for? Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Trantroy. A lot of these modifications and inclusions will help people with disabilities as well. And I think that anything that we can do to make the elderly or the disabled be more included in our communities, I think is great. I think that they are both, can be quite isolated populations. And I think the more that we can draw them into our communities and really be a part of the community and contribute and participate, I think is actually a benefit to then everyone in the community.
Are there any other speakers on the item? Councillor Terrantroy, do you wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous.
Item 15.3, rate waiver, Buoyant Up Progress Association. The Shire President has declared a proximity interest for this item and therefore is required to leave the room, and I take the hot seat. Do I have a mover?
Could I move the motion with an amendment, please?
You're moving an alternative recommendation? Yep.
Yes.
Can you give us the alternative recommendation and then I'll call for a seconder?
That the council accepts the request from the Buoyant Up Progress Association for a rate waiver on cottages 73, 77 and 83 on reserve 49915 for the financial year of 2022-2023. So simply taking out rejects and putting in the word accepts.
And can I get a seconder? Councillor Mogg. Councillor Noonan, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. We've had a presentation earlier today from Mr. Saunders, and the BPA has certainly done an enormous amount of work on the cottages. The thing that impresses me the most about the cottages and the way they have worked is the way that it has drawn a community of people together who work on a regular basis, weekly, I believe, who get there and they're working together for a common cause to improve something for the whole community. And you know, there's also all of the community, not just the community benefits, but the benefits for people participating and engaging in those activities. So I think that this is actually a really good investment that the Shire makes by encouraging and facilitating or making that easier. So I commend the BPA and the people who have made the cottages such a tremendous asset for the community, and I wish them all the best in all their future endeavours. And I encourage fellow councillors to support this alternative recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Councillor Mogg, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Deputy President. Basically, thank you, Councillor Noonan, for making the amendment, and I fully support your sentiments and words said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mogg. Do I have any speakers against? Councillor Tarantroy. Thank you, Councillor Tarantroy. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Tarantroy. Unfortunately, the BPA doesn't appear to be a charitable foundation or organisation. They do make a profit by way of the rent. Similarly to the golf club rates waiver that we received last year, if they elect to put those funds towards upgrades or maintenance, then so be it. But unfortunately, they do make a profit. And the golf club decision last year set the precedent that really it was only going to be charitable foundation. Well, the way I interpreted that decision was that only charitable organisations were going to be eligible for rates waivers. So unfortunately, I was comfortable with the original officer's recommendation, and so I won't be supporting this alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor McCleary, are you putting your hand up? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mine's a way of an observation. I looked at the rent for each of the houses, and it's a pity I can't get the query up. But if I look at around the surrounding areas, we're looking at rents well above $300 a week, and even just increasing them slightly gives a better revenue to the association. And I kind of wonder whether there's opportunity there to obtain more funding through just commercial arrangements and changing the rating, the rental fees for the people that occupy these things. I don't know the background to them, so it's a fairly new thing, but I think there's opportunity to pick up some more funds through another process. And yeah, look, I agree with my two counterparts on either side of me. I'd like to move back to the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. I think it just leaves me, and I just want to make some comments. Sorry. That is just a procedural point from the CEO, sorry. I'm going to foreshadow the original motion because I am the only person who is now in the position who can do that. Just in the situation where if this does fail and council doesn't have a foreshadow motion it leaves leaves staff with no direction, and I think it will ultimately just have to come back. So we can resolve this tonight. I have really struggled with this one over the last couple of weeks. I get the argument that Councillor McCleary makes, and I take it one step further, and one of the comments I made during the rating discussion, and particularly around when we got to discussions of cost of living, was I know in Capel anyway that and the average across the board for rental increases has been higher than rate increases, and the people who really were copping the increases week on week were renters. And so I wonder, and we don't know this information perhaps in too much detail, which Councillor McCleary touched on around the competitiveness of the leases on the properties. But I take a really good point from Mr. Saunders about the fact that I remember when this came to council, and what was initially presented to council was to, at quite a significant cost, demolish these sites, to remove any potential rating revenue from these sites, and of course there was a cost at the time to the Shire to dispose of the properties. I don't see from that perspective us necessarily going backwards from where we are in that position that we were those years ago, because this is rate revenue that was never going to be realised if we were to spend the money on demolishing the sites. What challenges me is I do agree that at some point we have to say, well, no, there is not commercial gain, because it is still a community organisation. It's not going into the pockets of members, it's going into the pockets of the organisation who is investing money in these buildings. And Mr. Saunders took me on a tour before I think the re-stumping was done, and a lot of work has been done since then. And so that may not be a very clear argument from me, because I'm sort of arguing both, but I am inclined to accept the request. I think there is no real actual loss to the Shire, considering the situation we were initially in, but may, if I'm here in 3 years' time, be as sympathetic to the issue and think that maybe the line is drawn then. Well, that's up to the decision in a few years' time, but I think I'm definitely getting to that point. But I think the points that were made today in the presentation really stayed with me. So that's it from me. This item will require an absolute majority, which is 5 to pass. So I'll give the mover the right of reply. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. Yes, I think the point has been made that, yep, certainly the cottages through the rent provide a stream of funds. However, those funds have all been or are being channelled back into repairing the cottages, bringing them up to a condition where they can then start generating income for the community. But there's an additional purpose in repairing the cottages, and in that they become community assets which might not necessarily be rented out, but that could be used for any number of things. So, community nursing. They could become a information centre for Boyne, a kindergarten purposes. There are all sorts of opportunities that the cottages then provide for Boyne, that the people of Boyne through the Boyne Progress Association then get the opportunity to say, well, what's something that we want to, what's a facility, an opportunity that we want to provide in Boyne for the community. So it's not just about let's fix these cottages up and put people in there to rent them out and make some money. It's not about gaining the rates revenue. What it is about certainly saving heritage, which I think is very, very important. And it's about providing having the opportunity to provide facility, built structure, which can be used for any number of community purposes that the residents, the community of Boynup decide that they would like to have, things that they would otherwise have to come to council and say, will you build this for us, or will you build, you know, something much bigger, and which, if we were to be starting from scratch, would cost you know, considerably more. So I think that that this is actually, the $16,000 is a small amount in the scheme of things, and it's a way in which the council can indicate its support for a group that is clearly not for profit. It's a community volunteer organisation where people are, you know, standing up and doing things for the betterment of their community, with a long-term vision to provide, you know, an important asset which has the flexibility to become any number of options for that community. So I would encourage councillors to support this recommendation, or this motion.
And I'll put the alternative recommendation to the vote, which is that council accepts the request from Boynup Progress Associations for rate waiver of cottages number 73, 74, 83 on reserve 49915 for financial year 2022-23. All those in favour? That's myself. And those against? So it is a tie vote, but the casting vote is not able to determine a absolute majority. So the motion does fail for want of an absolute majority. The foreshadowed motion is now on the table, and the foreshadowed motion is that council rejects. I don't think I need to read it again, but is the foreshadowed motion. I have technically moved that foreshadow motion myself, so I'll need a seconder for the foreshadowed motion. Councillor Terran-Troy. As a mover, I don't wish to speak on that item. I'll reserve my right for the time being. Councillor Terran-Troy.
Yes, look, I understand that the Progress Committee, the Boynup Progress Committee, has done a lot of work on the 3 cottages, and I've read all the detail and have been thinking about it. But the thing is, they entered into a lease agreement, and the office and even the officers in all the reports acknowledge the investment required for all the 3 cottages, and which the BPA were aware of when they signed the lease. So basically, it's a commercial arrangement, and we've already waived the rates in previous years, except for the disposal of rubbish and things like that. But the thing is, the main thing that sticks with me is that it's a commercial arrangement. Council's made previous decisions that support not-for-profit charitable organisations, and waiving the rates for those purposes. But also, the council decision on the 22nd of March 2017, the council actually said, and this is supporting a previous decision on council prior to my time on council, it says the retention of the cottages should have no financial impact to the Shire, with the Boynup Progress Association accepting the full financial management of the assets through the executed lease agreement. So I implore my fellow councillors not to throw away just over $20,000 of residents' money that is gained from the procurement of the rates of these 3 cottages. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Terran-Troy. Do I have anyone to speak against the foreshadowed motion? Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Deputy President. I undertook an invitation to visit the cottages when I came on council and heard the story and how amazing it is a group of people have passion to do something that everybody benefits, and it benefits the Shire, tourism, it goes fourfold. But I also understood, I was told, that if they have to pay rates, it will inhibit their outcome of getting the whole project, building and everything that needs to happen in time. So I'd just like to take that into consideration, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mogg. Do I have any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor McCleary.
Thanks, Mr. Shadow. Much the same on my other topic. A $30 a week increase on the rates would be far in advance of the $4,100 that gets levied for rates. So, you know, increasing their rate revenue would return them the same result.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Does anyone else wish to speak on the item? I think yep, Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reflection as much as anything, that if the BPA were a religion or a charitable organisation, that this wouldn't even be coming to council, and they would be doing the same work, that be providing the same sort of facilities. So in that sense, this is really picking up on the point made by Councillor Andrew earlier, that and that's why I think that this is different to the golf club, where the golf club is a sport. It's providing enjoyment and pleasure and leisure for the members and for anyone else who wants to pay the fee to go and play, where it doesn't have the same aspect of reliance on volunteers putting effort in their own time over a long period of time and consistently putting that in week after week in order to improve their community. The golf club is not really doing that in that same regard. They're happy to pay fees to play golf, to enjoy that leisure activity, which I enjoy as well. But I'm happy to pay the fee for. So that's where I think there's a difference in these two situations.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Is there any other councillors who wish to speak on the item who haven't spoken? No? I just want to add, which was briefly touched on, about the work that the association is doing in upkeeping what is ultimately a heritage building. So they've got projected costs of $29,000 for the future works. They currently have just $15,752.59 in the bank. $6,000 is ring-fenced for emergency property management purposes, which is good practice, of course, managing the properties. And last year they expended more on the buildings. They expended a similar amount of $30,000, while they actually went slightly backwards last year, having invested so much into the properties. So not only is, I think, the financial loss or realised loss to the Shire so minimal, given that this was never realised rate income, and the investments that are being made by the association into these buildings, I think it is more than fair enough to grant them this Waits waiver for the time being, for this period anyway. And just to add, in case councillors aren't aware, so the item requires an absolute majority. If the item fails to receive an absolute majority, then the item is quite simply at this point dealt with, considering we've considered both options, accept and reject, and so it would simply go back to the status quo unless something was to come to council again in the future. So that would ultimately mean that the weights weren't waived in that situation. I don't have anything else to add, so I will ask I am the mover. I am the mover, so I don't need to, the mover has had their right of reply. I will put the item to the vote. The item is that we reject the request. All those in favour? Councillor Terran-Troy, Councillor Andrew and Councillor McCleary. All those against? That is 3-3 fail of an absolute majority. The item has failed. We will welcome the Shire President back into the room. The Shire President hasn't re-entered the room, so I'm still in the chair. I'm going to move adjournment for 5 minutes. Yep. Do I have a seconder for that adjournment? Councillor Mogg. All those in favour? Meeting is adjourned for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 7:16. I'll go. All right. The time is 7:16 and the council has returned from adjournment. The Shire President has returned and I will vacate the chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Deputy President. We move on to item 15.4, the financial statements for the 30th of November 2022. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Andrew. A seconder. Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor Andrew. Councillor Terrantroy. Are there any speakers? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be quick. I think it's important to look at the overview of revenues and stuff. Not the word stuff, not good, but total interest earned year to date is quite a bit higher than what we were expecting, and that's the movement in the financial returns on our investments, which is a good thing. And also the above increase in cash in investments is due to the rates coming in on the second quarter, so the January payments. So there's some good things in there. It'll be good to see how we go with investments from the previous item in the agenda. So yeah, looking forward to another positive outcome in the next month.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Andrew, wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Item 15.5, accounts paid during the month of December 2022. Is there a mover for those? Councillor Andrew. A seconder, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Andrew. Councillor Andrew. McCleary. Are there any other speakers? No. The mover wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. There is no new business of an urgent nature, so public question time. Are there any public questions? No? All right. Are there any motions without notice? No. Any notice of motions for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of the council? No. There are no items for consideration behind closed doors. And there being no further business on tonight's agenda, I will declare the meeting closed at 7:19. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight.